Welcome everybody back for another episode of Proof of Vision. Fantastic conversation for you guys today with Amadeo from YieldNest. He's the founder. He's been around forever. He's an OG. Heavily involved in Curve and some of the earliest protocols in DeFi. So he's been around the block a little bit, and it was really interesting to hear about his thoughts on the space in general when it comes to the LRT and the LST space, how they're thinking about kind of like their product stack and what it can do and kind of what they're focused on. I think structured products have come a long way in DeFi, and they have a long way to go. And I think you hear the vision and the passion behind what Deo is describing as their kind of structured product stack for various assets like ETH, BTC, BNB, and then obviously I think they're going to have a stablecoin strategy as well. But really, really good stuff. Hope you guys enjoy it. We get into a lot in the interview. And as always, please like and subscribe and come back for more for the next episode. So we'll talk soon. Take care. All right. Welcome everybody back to another episode of Proof of Vision. Really, really excited today. We've got Amadeo on from YieldNest, the founder in chief. How are we doing, sir?
Yes, doing very, very well. Very nice to be here and looking forward to this interview. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really excited to have you on. A lot of things happening, obviously, in the LRT space. A lot of controversy in Ethereum right now, I think, too, which, I know you've been around for quite a while, so I'm sure you have some insight there. But before we dive into what's going on with YieldNest and what's happening in these markets, maybe give the listeners a little bit of background on yourself. How did you get into crypto? What were you doing before that? And ultimately, what led you to building YieldNest?
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, so I'm Amadeo Brands from the Netherlands. My background is computer science, economics, and actually got into crypto all the way back in 2012 and the first kind of bubble of crypto. And I remember even... it was this really small bubble. It went from $50 to $100. I was like, oh my God, what is this shit? And, I was still fully brainwashed, banks. I was working for banks and insurance companies. And, I was in a corporate in corporate IT and consultancy. And then when Ethereum launched around 2014, 15, right, I got very much interested in crypto. I was like, oh, I still have this Bitcoin stuff laying around. Oh, that went up. And I started to look at it and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Bought some ETH. And then in 2016, I just quit my traditional job and I just entered full-time in crypto. And then I worked for Cyber Capital in the Netherlands. It was the first crypto hedge fund in the Netherlands. And we were the best performing fund in the world 2017 because we had 11,000% gains. Was insane. We started with just $1 million fund with a couple of money from a couple of friends and, oh yeah, let's do this crypto thing together. Oh yeah, let's start a fund. That would be fun. And see, we can regulate it, new asset class. Very naive, very young, and learned so many things. We were actually back then a fundamental investment fund for all sake. So what we were doing, we were analyzing all these different crypto projects. We were looking at their GitHub stats and all these things. And back in the day, there were so many shitcoins and so many weird projects. You could literally look on GitHub and the projects that were actually doing something, you could see, oh, they're actually building something, and you could see that. And you would then bet on it, right? To see GitHub activity going up, oh, that's increase. And we did that over 50, 60 assets. So we had a lot of different assets, ups and downs. And eventually then in the bear market in 2018 when it crashed, I was at Cyber Capital. I was not a partner. I was a technical hire. So I built the financial software to do all the NAVs and to all the time series because that was also my background, to manage and do accountancy and build banking systems, right? And then I built a NAV system for a crypto fund. Really cool. Learned so many things. And then in the bear market, went a little bit back to more traditional software and kept always in crypto. And then actually early in 2019, 2019. So after 2018 was this year of bear. Then 2019, DeFi started to bubble up, right? MakerDAO, all the other things. And I did a course, one of the first courses about decentralized finance 101 with Ivan on Tech, done by 70,000 people at the time because there was no other course. And that exploded. That was great. And then I started another DeFi fund for myself, a bit more institutional focused. That also went very well. We timed the top of 2022 very well. And in between, I worked for MakerDAO, worked with Kirk Finance and Blamaris team. I did like other projects. I was interim CTO. I did a lot of consultancy. And then, at around end of 2023, 2024, I was taking actually a little bit of a sabbatical because I was like, crypto is hiring, as everybody knows. So I needed a little bit of a break. And then I was like, I'm going to build structured products, right? That was kind of how YieldNest started, as like, okay, because I'm a DeFi bull, I'm a DeFi purist. I love DeFi, and I think it's very important for the world, for all of us to create a self-sovereign money layer, because money is, unfortunately, politics. Money is weird a lot of times, and money is also a lot of times is kind of like, it's something that most people don't really understand. So in my opinion, money should be non-opinionated, right? It should be a self-sovereign layer that I have economic energy, you have economic energy, we work, and we want to store that economic energy in certain ways, and then spend it and let it work for one another. And we don't want to give it away. So it needs to be self-custodial. We want it to be self-custodial, right? And I was thinking, okay, how do we get more people in? Because I did that amazing crypto course, but even after that crypto course, I did still see like a lot of people that just went to the shit coins or, the meme stuff that we see now again. Like, and it's fine. It's part of the market and we're maturing. But how do we get people in to save instead of in a savings account in a bank, stake crypto or ETH, stake their ETH, right? So that's how YieldNest got started.
Gotcha. And what would you say? So I think, probably a lot of our listeners, they know what LSTs are. They know what LRTs are as well at this point, due to the hype. But what would you say differentiates YieldNest from maybe some of the other LST and LRT providers out there?
Yeah, so there's a lot of, I think, liquid staking tokens. And I think I see crypto as we're building primitive and we're building core infrastructure, and we need to build on top of each other's blue chip infra, right? So especially, that's why I got so much attracted to Kirk. Like Michael Agrov is a genius. Like he's very smart. And the way he constructed the Kirk contract is that you want and that's why it also got a lot of, and still has a lot of adoption. It's not just a random amen, but actually those pool contracts, they deploy it and they're completely immutable, right? So part of these protocols, you want to build eventually immutable. So then you get modes and you get economic games and other elements, right? And how YieldNest differentiated itself, how YieldNest is differentiating and is different from other LRTs or other LSDs or other DeFi structured product, is that I think with the MAX LRTs, which I will dive in a little bit more, that we have this DeFi primitive of kind of like this, like an evolving intelligent DeFi engine that kind of just scours for new DeFi opportunities, integrates with it, and then has some sort of like sub-DAOs around the MAX LRTs, enshrines certain DeFi blue chip protocols in itself, right? And then end users, they just can hold this token, and the token itself does certain function in decentralized finance, right? So I think the main difference between, for example, a YieldNest and a Renzo and EtherFi is that you can see Renzo and EtherFi already flip-flopping to credit cards and other things. We are really DeFi. So I know DeFi. I was at the beginning of DeFi, and I want to make DeFi more mature. And I think the way to do that is to build Lego blocks. That's money Lego, right? That's how it started. And for that money Lego is not constantly changing. Lego should stay very solid. Lego should stay has immutable parts. And I mean, I was first to admit, like with YieldNest, we're starting protocols. So of course, there's dynamic parts into it, a lot. But we have this very clear vision to harden things over time, to decentralize things fully over time. And with that, if everybody at the good protocols in the DeFi industry do that, like Aave is also doing that, right? You can see Aave's code base is expanding to a lot of different angles. And some parts of the Ivy code base are open source. People are forking it, and it's becoming this kind of standard. Curve pools and other things, maybe with some issues there with Viper, but Viper is also great, and it's all great. So you see these different protocols, these different Lego blocks are forming itself, and YieldNest sees that vision of like, we need to put these composable things together. Does it mean that I need to keep running around and switching to 1,000 different opportunities at the same time and lever up and blow up? No. It's actually more slowly, high rewards, risk, and with the risk-adjusted returns, right?
This episode is brought to you by Pendle. Pendle is a leading protocol in the DeFi yield sector, operating as a permissionless yield trading protocol, facilitating the tokenization and splitting of any yield-bearing assets in DeFi. This allows users to speculate on future yield or earn a fixed rate on their assets. Learn more at pendle.finance. Right. It makes sense. So under the hood then, so I deposit my ETH into one of these MAX LRT strategies, or I deposit my BTC or my BNB, I think are the three assets that you guys have live now. And then essentially what the contracts are doing from YieldNest is they're like optimizing my assets across the ecosystem for, looking for the best risk-adjusted yield in the market. Is that essentially a good description of what's going on under the hood there?
Yeah, and there's 4 assets, right? There are going to be 4 assets. Obviously, some bit busy towards our TGE is coming up, our DAO initiation is coming up, Aragon. So we want to, we have 2 products ready, and we just kind of want to get a lot of feedback, get started with it, and then later we have our YNETH-X, YNBNB-X, YNBTC-X, and YNUSD-X. So these 4 derivatives. And what makes it special and different is that these vaults settle on a base layer, right? So, and that goes all the way back to why, we're probably going to talk about it in a bit, why I got interested in restaking, because I'm a big fan of the settlement assurances, and my view of crypto and blockchains is that they eventually will become proof chains, right? I can keep my assets on layer 1, then I can make a signature and I can say, hey, execute a trade on Arbitrum, execute a trade on this base rollup. This, what I'm explaining, is probably only going to be possible in base rollups, but maybe also more rollups, right? And then you can make a signature, keep the L1 settlement assurances, but have the execution done somewhere else. It executes and it syncs back to state, right? So that's great. And the MAX LRT architecture is already like that, right? So where it has, if we take YNETH-X, YNETH Max with maximum yields as an example, it has a layer 1 kind of like vault where it acts like a glue, and it kind of refers back to Vitalik's article about the glue processor architecture, where it acts like a glue and it says, okay, layer 1 vault has this assets and it has different strategies, right? And again, here comes my background in fund management, time series, NAVs, etc. Because in order to really understand this, you need to understand how a fund works. A fund, hedge fund and other funds have time series, or banks, they reconcile, etc. And they do that every day or every month or etc. In crypto, we need to do it every 10 seconds. Actually, it needs to happen instantly, right? When all deposits and withdrawals happen, right? So how do we do that? Well, we found a solution for that. And I think it's only recently possible that we can do that. So right now we use co-processors and a little bit of off-chain still, because also even the co-processors and a lot of the architecture is still a little bit in development, but we are kind of almost there and we already built it. So we got it to work. And then it's again hardening all the security, hardening all the performance of it. But right now, that's why right now the YNETH Max settles on ETH layer 1, can do strategies on layer 1, and then theoretically in the future, and we're already exploring that, for example, with Tyco and Rise, that are 2 base rollups, where we can then say, okay, this is a ETH layer 1 asset with a vault that settles all the accounting of its other strategies on layer 1, and it can then go to a Tyco or Rise or Barachain or even Bitcoin or other chains, depending on how fast the data syncs, right? The problem is that if I have a strategy on a different chain and somebody invests in ETH L1, you do need to sync all that data in order to give the right amount of shares. Well, we found a solution for that, and that's what the MAX LRTs will do. So the MAX LRTs are a glue gluing all these different strategies together and making it very flexible for the end user. The end user just has one asset, gets a max yield, and in the background, there's a lot of stuff happening.
Gotcha. No, I think it's interesting because I think this is where I see a lot of the DeFi space going. It's kind of like these optimization vaults or these optimization contracts, which are essentially, right, they're structured products, but they're in vault form. To make the user experience easier, is kind of the key there, I think. You mentioned how tedious it is, right, for a fund, for individuals in the space that want to manage their own portfolio, how much time that takes, constantly, looking on DeFi Llama for the maximum amount of yield, the least amount of opportunity costs, the risks involved are very, very hard to gauge, at certain points in time, right? And so you've kind of created a product where the vaults are doing all of that optimization for the user, which is really cool, right? I think that much of crypto needs to move towards this type of UX because of how complex it is. But talk about the risk management a little bit too. Like, is it actively monitoring, some of the risk vectors, out there for these protocols, or like, how do you guys decide maybe like what protocols to add into the vault as an underlying strategy?
Great question. And that's going to move quite slow, right? So it's not the most sexy 1000% yield. Probably in the beginning it is, because we're obviously going to juice it up. So, the earlier the better, right? But over time, the goal is to make it a stable, trustworthy source of yield and income that people trust, right? And we do that. And again, it is also another reasons for the existence of YieldNest, because if you are a retail user, you cannot get all those tools. Right now, we have threat prevention tools. We have security tools that I was using with the fund, and I was using at different companies. But these tools, they're so expensive. I'm not using the tools for my personal portfolio, right? Because it's literally like around $50,000 a year. Plus, it will cost you quite a lot of effort to configure all of it, right? So it's called Hypernative. Like it's a pretty well-known tool, right? And what it does, like threat prevention, and it looks in the mempool, and it looks into other contexts that are deployed, and it actually 24/7 kind of scours all the different signals. And it kind of looks also into the architecture, how we build it, right? So the MAX LRT vault is a glue. And the MAX LRT vault is actually pretty stupid. It just holds the asset and it accounts the asset. It's a very simple function. It's just, you will see if you look into the code, we kept it as minimum as possible, as minimum amount of lines of code as possible. So we keep it simple, less attack vectors, that's really secure and safe. 4626 compliant, all the standards, Open Zeppelin. It's very safe and secure with a little bit of configurations to do that accounting that I just explained, right? Then underlying, you have strategy. So in YND in the beginning, it's going to be quite simple. It has an Euler strategy, it has a Morpho strategy, it has a curve strategy, and it has, maybe I'm forgetting something, or strategy. Oh, and it has then YND and YNLSD, right? Like our own LRTs that we already built, right? So these assets are included in that basket. And what happens, like you invest on top. And the beautiful thing of the system as well is that the MAX LRT is not a single asset vault, it's actually a multi-asset vault. So it can actually hold multiple assets on top, rebalancing in between. If any of these assets depacks, I will actually explain that after this explanation. We have a lot of protections for that. And we even, if one asset goes under the knees, we even can even make money with depacks, right? So arbitrages and everything. So there's a lot of optimization in it. And going back to the main question, like how do we keep these strategies secure? Because that's actually always has been quite hard, also with previous other optimizers, etc., etc. And you can see, for example, Yearn is fantastic. Yearn v3 is amazing. And they actually took the right routes with very secure infrastructure. That's why Yearn, I cannot remember when was the last time a Yearn vault got hacked. I don't think even ever was, right? So they're super secure, they're super safe, and also Wavy, also one of the advisors of YieldNest, and we're very close with Yearn. And actually, YND the top level vault is our custom code, right? And the lower level vaults is custom code, but we are using Yearn strategies as lower level vaults, right? And well, there's many different variations of these vaults. So we have different strategies, and we constantly monitor. So if any of these strategies shows a sign of issues or whatever we see happening to it, we can eject to the top level vault. So that means that there's minimum principal loss, right? But I would be the last to say, like, if any extra yield is always a little bit of extra risk, but we try to minimize it. So if we, for example, in a curve pool, and that specific curve pool with that specific pair seems to have issues, we can eject from that vault, and we can even make that automated, right? So, and obviously, those security rules require a lot of expertise to configure. Yeah, and that's where I have my background in risk management, and together with the whole team and Lamaris. So that's our job, basically. And also, eventually, the AI that at Hypernative has a lot of algorithms, a lot of data, and we have Nest AI that will also constantly monitor everything, and eventually start this product, but eventually these MAX LRTs will transition into sub-DAOs. So then they will get their own kind of dedicated kind of teams to look at all these risks, right? Once they grow bigger, right? So it's like a scaling issue, right? Like right now we have 20 million TVL. Well, of course it's going to grow very much. So, but like if this goes to billions, yeah, then we will build out all the structures, and we thinking about those things already. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, I think on the sub-DAO thing, it reminds me of like Reserve. You know, Reserve has like governance separated for all of its stable coins, the indexes that they've created. So it kind of reminds me of that a little bit. And then on the optimization part, the risk management part, I was going to mention this, is like, it really is so important, and people don't realize how important it is until, because you don't need risk management until you need risk management. You know, people forget that. People never think about that. But I think about what happened with like usual money, right? And if you looked at some of the optimizers that were pouring money into like the Morpho vaults, the ones that were self-managed by, you know, Chaos Labs and some of these other risk managers, some of them did well, right? Like they were able to pull out early. But I think the one that did the best was actually iPour Fusion. And it's because they had this optimization kind of algorithm, right, managing that. And it was able to pull out like 5 hours earlier than everybody else because, you know, that was built into the code, right? That there was minimal manual intervention needed. And that's kind of what you guys are building too. And I think it's extremely important. And not only that, right, but also the arbitrage bit is very important as well. Like people don't realize that a lot of times when these assets are depegged, depending on the reason, right, like that could be a very, very profitable opportunity, and not necessarily something to be scared of, but maybe something to capitalize on. And that's something that, again, if you have built into your strategies, is just robust, right? You need to have that robustness of yield strategies, I think, when you're building these vaults and these structured products. So it's very relevant, yeah.
And one of the more badges that I do want to wear, and I never really said it anywhere. Well, I said it multiple times already, probably, but it's like as part of the Lamaris, when I was at Kirk Finance, I did write an article together with Fiddy about the risk of Luna, of Terra Luna, and this was 3 months, even 4 months before the collapse, and then 2 articles, one article 4 months before the collapse, one article 3 months before the collapse, in a very kind of academic kind of way of like, hey, this is never going to work. What is going on here? Like, are we missing something? Like, what's happening? Like, like this can't be real. And then getting attacked by people, right? And then I was like, oh my God, there's something here. I didn't short it myself, but what we're thinking of is you have these liquidity bands, right? So of course you're not going to short if it depegs like 1 cent and short it, then you will be destroyed. But if there's certain bands and you hold certain assets, you can play around with that. And it's all, again, game theory, right? Again, but we are looking into that, and we're also looking into like, you know, like, oh, we see this asset and we swap it out, or another implementation that we're looking into is actually a very underexplored vault, is actually Yearn vault, is the YETH vault. It has not that much CVL, but I think its design is fantastic. It actually lets people swap. So it decreases the swap route of the assets that you want to get rid of, right? So let's say we have a basket of assets and we're like, oh, this assets we want to get rid of. Well, you just lower the fee of swapping it, and then you let people swap through your vault. And then the vault automatically rebalances as well. So in general, I think this whole DeFi space, the whole vault and composable finance space is actually very underexplored. And there's a lot of opportunities still, yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree 100% there. So we kind of talked about what's happening under the hood a little bit. Now, one question I also had is like, so when users want to withdraw, like, so obviously, you know, you mentioned, you know, you guys are in LSTs, LRTs. optimizing across different protocols. Depending on the protocol that those assets are sitting in, there are like delays, right? Like you can't get an instant redemption from the beacon chain, for example. If you're an eigenlayer, I don't think you have instant withdrawals, or maybe they do now, but there can be delays, right? So like, how do you guys ensure that there's liquidity for people to withdraw on demand if they want to do that?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? So when we started with a native restaking token on eigenlayer. We talk a bit more about later, right? But that native restaking token on eigenlayer has indeed a lockup time, right? And it's even going to increase from 7 days to 14 days on the eigenlayer side. And then you also have the beacon chain queue. So it's quite a lot of queuing, right? So actually with the standard LRT, you have that issue of like, oh, you only have either the queue or the liquidity pool. Again, with the MAX LRTs, you have a liquidity pool, you have the queue, but then in between you also have a buffer strategy, right? Because we just, again, restaking, in my opinion, is hijacked by these other protocols that are like, oh, restaking, blah, blah, blah. But restaking is just about capital efficiency, in my opinion. And I think that like what we're doing is like, okay, we're holding different strategies, and we're not just like the LRTs have also these gain vaults and stuff, but they are not 100% focused on it. It's like a side project, right? This is our 100% focus. So our vaults have a buffer strategy, have a liquidity pool. So there is liquidity pools on Curve and on other locations, which will of course make sure that liquidity should be sufficient, right? Then as a fallback mechanism, there is a buffer strategy where portion of the funds are in a earlier buffer, right? That then again provides liquidity in wrapped ETH. So it just takes in wrapped ETH, very secure. And then, the YND Max vault, you can borrow against it. So it creates utility and a buffer. You see, like we stack those two things together. And then we even have a morpho buffer, which is also instant, but that morpho buffer takes in wrap stake. So there is again a atomic action to swap it out, right? And then the third one, of course, is the queuing. So then if all these buffers and all everything runs out, then there is, of course, the YNE for the YND that we take from, in this case, eigenlayer or symbiotic or other restaking protocols or other liquidity pools or other positions we have it in. But we always want to build multiple layers of defense. And that's actually quite nice because you can always see, okay, what's happening? All right, we solve it, right? And if there's ever a panic in the market and if it's not justified, then the people that stay calm, they actually gain from it because then it will read back and it's going to be fine. But because of those multiple layers of defense, it's actually more secure than a standard LSD or LRT.
Right.
Or
right.
more liquids.
Right. And everybody can always look on chain and see what that duration looks like too, right? So if you have a certain percentage of your portfolio, your vault portfolio is in, is held up on the beacon chain, everybody can see when those are coming to be redeemable, right? And so the DPEG, any kind of DPEG should close as a result of that. If arbitrages are looking, they're smart.
Our YND product, we spend a lot of time on that. There's a little bit the engineering fallacy there because we actually prove all the validators. So we went maybe a bit too extreme, but all the validators are proven and you can see them on chain. We sign proof signatures of the validators that are spinned up for YND and also YNLSDE. So you can see those proofs on chain. So it's like, okay, it's right here, but that is 14 days.
Yep. No, it makes sense. It makes sense. I mean, and again, too, the having fallback measures, multiple ways that people can exit, I think you've thought of a lot, when it comes to like the structure, of the vault itself. You mentioned eigenlayer, mentioned restaking a little bit. Let's pivot and start talking about that a little bit. I was looking before we got on the call, right, and really just looking at eigenlayer and symbiotic is the two that I pulled up. Eigenlayer's down like 40% on its TVL in the last 6 months, I think, 40+%. Symbiotic's down 50% over the last year. Obviously, LRTs had a lot of hype. Restaking had a ton of hype. A lot of critics would say that, now, I guess, in retrospect, the tech is a little early compared to maybe like where the hype was. The hype was here and the tech was kind of like here, And obviously, like airdrop mania, that's kind of what kicked off like this points mania, right? But just kind of curious, like what your thoughts are on this. Like do you think that there was some fumbling there? What do you think?
Well, yeah, first of all, I think still that restaking as a shared security primitive is super fascinating, right? And it's something that actually is going to will change DeFi in a very positive way. And I got nerd sniped by the paper of Siram. Siram is a fantastic researcher, and I really respect his work. And I think that restaking and the mechanism that he designed with shared security, subjective and intersubjective faults, cost of corruption, all the research Siram and Eigenlayer and all the teams did there was fantastic. And I think it's going to add a lot of value to the overall decentralized financial space, to the overall cryptography space. So that being said, I think that's great, right? But I think you can actually, if you read the white paper of Eigenlayer in itself, you can read in there that they want to introduce various slashing mechanisms. There's going to be easy ways to do proof generation, to generate ZK sync. This goes a bit too far and also from above my opinion, but that's why I was interested in Eigenlayer, right? Because in order for us to generate certain proofs, that is very difficult, right? And that takes a lot of time. For example, if we now say, let's make an agreement on chain, let's put some money in some sort of a contract, and then if we both sign a proof, and then if the weather data goes to 30 degrees, if tomorrow the weather is 30 degrees Celsius, and you say it's cooler, I say it's hotter, and then the weather data comes out, the weather data gets hashed on chain, that proof gets generated, gets submitted, and then an action happens, right? Fantastic, because you have something called instant dispute resolutions, right? So if we make an agreement between each other, we can hash it on chain, we can submit a proof, and we can instantly resolve the dispute and instantly resolve that and instantly pay out the money, right? With my background in insurance and banking, fantastic, because like all these big companies, if you go anywhere capital city in the world, all these big banks, all these big buildings, there's a bunch of people pushing papers to kind of do that, right? So and that can be completely automated. That can be completely optimized with these kind of proof systems or these kind of optimizations and these kind of custom reward flows, right? That really nerd sniped me. I was like, wow. And then I was like, oh, also the product that I'm building now with these packages and the syncing of strategies, what I said in the beginning, I was like, wow, I can use the Eigenlayer stack for that. I'm super excited what they're going to build. And now seeing what they've built, and I'm just, I'm a little bit disappointed with the delivery. And I think I view restaking as an evolving primitive with a broader mission to unlock capital efficiency and redefine what's possible in DeFi. And that's how it always started, and that's why I got the hype, right? It didn't get the hype because of points per se. Again, there was one part of it, but the initial pump was probably because some people saw like, oh, I can make more money, I can lay more yields, I can make some things here efficient here, I can see real world use cases with syncing the export and the economic security. Great, right? But the problem is that building these proof systems and building these slashing mechanisms is super complex, right? So seeing Eigenlayer or Symbiotic raise the enormous amount of money that they did kind of suggests that they have the solution to that. And they don't, right? And that's the reality.
Right. Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, yeah, right. I mean, I'm sure it's coming, right? I mean, I think we both agree, and that ultimately, I think the tech will catch up. It's just the fact of like where it was when everything happened. I personally think maybe Eigenlayer launched their token too quickly, right? And you could theorize on like why that happened. Again, they raised a ton of money, right? So I'm sure that there's certain pressures from certain investors, right? That's how the game works. If you take VC capital, they want you to launch the token when is ideal. And obviously, I don't think you could be more ideal than, the time that they did it because of the level of hype that they were getting, but I don't know. I mean, it's a tough thing, right? Like I don't want to sit here and point to them and say, hey, they screwed up, but obviously, there's only things that we can learn from situations like this. And maybe they launched the token too quickly. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I will be the first. I'll just say, like, I think we should stop the circle jerking in crypto and also be more direct about these things, right? I think we can say that, and it's more like it's even better for the projects because they get like direct feedback. Guys, like, come on, like we need these custom flows, and that's my opinion. That's a lot of the project's opinion, and now just like they're delivering, for example, now rewards distribution v2, which and slashing v1. And even EigenDA itself doesn't have slashing, right? And then, of course, there's a whole philosophical debate, like, does it need slashing, doesn't need slashing? That's beside the point. It's more like you have to stack and you want things to build on top of it, to build these mechanisms. Then you need that kind of expressiveness in your tool set, right? So, I think it still will come around, but I think as an industry, we shouldn't now just say, oh, restaking is gone. And it's like, it's a bit annoying because like restaking is more about capital efficiency, in my opinion, and stacking and capital efficiency and layering different yield opportunities, making DeFi generally more efficient. And, you know, like, and there are so many cool things that I see there. Like you can reload your loans. You can actually also, for example, there is this problem with liquidity pools, right? Liquidity pools have impermanent loss and toxic order flow. Well, we can use the liquidity pools, then kind of restake it or reuse it, and then borrow against the liquidity pools. And if there's some toxicity or if there's efficiency, you borrow against it, you directly market make it yourself, right? And there's so much efficiency to be gained. With the end goal that we should all have, we shouldn't just focus on, oh, I large token make more money. The end goal also for myself, and I'm not saying that I'm going to do that by myself. I think there's an end goal as an industry that we need to find a way to get price discovery of crypto assets on chain without any centralized exchange, right? Then everybody wins, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a valid points, right? And again, too, I mean, I think, you know, if anybody's listening to this, right, you are the founder of an LRT based company, right? So like, and I don't see many, you know, LRT providers, right, or LRT companies coming out criticizing any of this and being honest about it. And so I think it's important that the people that are in the trenches in this space, you know, they voice these concerns, right? Or else nothing will ever get fixed or addressed.
It's really hard again because everybody is, well, it would be easier for me to just be like, oh, I'm an LRT, I'm going to rebalance only over the, you know, we have that stack. We actually have a whole stack to package AVSs, to categorize AVSs. You can see that in my old Llama risk. We did so much work on it, right? So it would have been easier to just go package that and then, oh, large token. No, I want to make, like, I see that direction where it's going and I want to make the intermediate, like, I want to move forward with DeFi. And I think restaking will eventually come, but I do think they need to get that stuff in order. And then in the meantime, I'm just going to focus back on decentralized finance, kind of like full circle where I kind of like initially started structured product in DeFi. Oh, restaking, this is really cool because like I see a lot of like opportunities here by actually build restaking to build structured products in DeFi easier by using AVSs, networks, etc. But I do see that there's a lot of work to be done still. And actually, when I see that work, if that work's done, I will be the first to just embrace it and build on top of it as well. Like, you know, like, and that brings me also to Bitcoin restaking and Bitcoin L2s.
Yeah. No, let's talk about that a little bit actually. So like obviously ETH is not the only asset that you guys support. Bitcoin restaking, in my opinion, is I mean, obviously, I think the tech is probably still in the same spot, but I think it is very important because think about how much Bitcoin is out there that's not earning really any yield historically. It's like untapped liquidity in DeFi almost, right? Like there's only been a certain amount of Bitcoin liquidity in DeFi, on the EVM, etc. And it's a huge unlock, in my opinion, because it's going to entice more people to bring that Bitcoin on chain and put it to work.
There's a big problem, right? Because we still didn't figure out a trustless Bitcoin ETH bridge or a trusted bridge. It still didn't figure it out, right? After all these years, right? And all these things. So I think the only way to do it is if Bitcoin gets a hard fork, which might get, then it will be super fantastic, right? Because our YNDTCX right now, we only have YNDTCK live on BNB chain because we work with kernel and we're trying to solve the issues there, right? But I would love it to build a YN BTC-X product that actually syncs its state to layer 1 BTC core. As you can hear, I'm an old big block, I'm on the big blocker side. Like I was quite in the trenches back then, and I do think there is a lot of unsolved problems still in Bitcoin that do need to be solved on that side. But I do see a lot of innovation as well. So it's moving very fast, and we're examining and looking at all the different opportunities and all the different innovations there as well, with the same criticism that I have on also Eigenlayer, Symbiotic, on other things where, by the way, I do want to give a shout out to Symbiotic, where I think Symbiotic is actually more DeFi aligned and actually immutably and more at that ethos designed, right? And Eigenlayer is further ahead because they have more time to work on other things. So it's like there's definitely different variations, but the same thing in the Bitcoin side. There's a lot of work to be done still, and actually Bitcoin L2s are just multi-sigs, right? And I'm quite worried that one of these will blow up, right? And then that will be very bad, right? So we are actively monitoring all these different ones, and I do think there's a lot of risk in that, and but I do monitor it, and we will integrate it, and we will work with it. But I do think things like, actually ETH is the best layer 2 of Bitcoin, in my opinion, right? Because if you see the liquidity of Bitcoin on ETH is quite high, relatively, it's still very low compared to what it could be, right? But there we need innovation really on the syncing of that, right? Instead of now building a whole new sidechain, right? Like, I don't know if you remember RSK, Rootstock, and it's an older Bitcoin L2. I was kind of involved, not like as a core developer, but I was very interested in it, right? Because I was building on ETH, and I'm an ex-Bitcoin maxi as well myself, right? But was nothing else back in the day, right? So yeah, and RSK is great, right? And they're very, very competent technically, and I just don't see the L2s and the other ones that are coming out. They're doing some new things, right? But I don't see breakthroughs. I don't see the 0 to 1 moments that they do different than RSK, right? So I would love to see that innovation. I think it's coming. It's coming at some point, and we are here for it, and we're examining everything. And as I said, MAX LRTs are perfect because we are unopinionated. We're chain agnostic. I'm not going to pick a side. I just want to make money for users, right? So we have these BTC derivatives. We use these derivatives. If any of them depegs, if any of them has issues, we can also profit from that, right? So we are here to look at all these different innovations. I know a lot about all these innovations, and also the whole team and the community. So we are packaging, making derivatives out of it, and we just want to make the maximum amount of returns for users on these products, with also the safety and risk-adjusted returns that gives that assurance.
Alchemix Finance empowers you to spend and save at the same time with a self-repaying, interest-free, non-liquidatable loan. Deposit your assets and access your future yield today. Available on Mainnet, Arbitrum, and Optimism. Head to alchemix.fi to get started. Yep. No, I mean, and again, too, I mean, from a business model perspective, I think you guys are positioned quite well, right? When it comes to where things are headed in the future, and even outside of like Bitcoin, right? Some of these other assets that you might have an opportunity to use, some of these structured products, and whether Hype, is one of those assets, or obviously Uniswap's coming out with their own chain. I'm sure there's gonna be assets, there that might be able to be optimized. It's endless, right? So I think from a business structure perspective, I think YieldNest is positioned quite well. So that being said, YieldNest is a business, right? It's a protocol. Where are you guys taking your fees? Is there standard 2 and 20, on the vaults? Where are you at on the fee side of things?
Yeah, so it's right now we're almost not we're going for adoption and growth, obviously, right? And the fees are dynamic. So in the case of a MAX LRT, the MAX LRT actually doesn't charge any fee, right? There's only a small withdrawal fee. It's just to don't get any spam, right? But it's a lower strategies where we charge a dynamic fee. So there could be a more advanced strategy that requires a little bit more fee because there's maybe more involved, right? So the top level vault is free, and then it's the strategies underneath that charge a variation of different fees. And right now, like generally the rule of thumb, I would say we charge 10% fee on the performance, right? So like let's say you have $100, like let's say you put in $1,000, you get $100 in yield, then we take $10 of that $100 that you gained, right? But that is like the general rule. But then underneath that, we have designed it so it's completely flexible, so that when the sub-DAO or the agent or the AI agent that is going to monitor and going to suggest fees, it can be per strategy adjustable.
Makes sense. And I guess that brings us full circle back to, the TGE that's coming up, right? The token. Let's talk about that a little bit. Like, what do you foresee this token's utility is? Talk about that a little bit. Obviously, I don't want to ask you when, because you don't want to answer that question. But like, let's talk about maybe the utility of the token a little bit.
Yeah, well, we're aiming for Q1. We're working really, really our asses off. Probably end of Q1 is the aim. I can talk about that. That's what we're aiming for, but it's always a lot of pressure on the teams. But it's looking very, very positive for that kind of time. And the token is going to be a vote escrow token, right? So the YieldNest DAO token, the YND token itself, is kind of like a naked token. It's very similar to CRV, right? CRV in itself doesn't really do anything. It's similar to YND, it doesn't really do anything. But when you take your YND and you stake it into our vote escrow contract, your voting power increases. So it's different than Curve, where you then have a token, you have to lock it for 4 years in its case. In our case, you stake the token and then you go upwards in voting power, a loyalty multiplier, and then of all the strategies that are generating fees, you will get a cut of that, right? So, and that automatically streams to the vaults, and that's in the form of more, maybe in the beginning, more YND tokens, but my goal is eventually to make it only real yield. So you get more ETH, or you get more stablecoins, or you get more YNUSDX, so we're dropping our own stablecoin derivative as an incentive. And the nice thing again here, it's fully dynamic, right? Like, and that's, I think, the key in crypto. These things need to be fully dynamic, but at the beginning, it's going to be very opinionated. You stake it, and then you get like more inflation, and eventually also other yield products. So you get like more ETH or more stablecoins, right? If you stake the product. So if you stake YND in this up curve, you will get more rewards, right? That's kind of the first step, right? So it's a vote escrow token model with an increasing curve. That's what we have. And then obviously, because also, Convex and StakeDAO and Yearn and all the OG protocols, I've been quite in the trenches of the CRV wars and the dates, right? And we're also looking at liquid lockers, right? So you have your fee curve that goes up, and then you have a liquid locker. And a liquid locker can actually be more viewed as a sub-DAO, right? Because these liquid lockers form power structures, right? With certain, because like if you actually look at CRV, it's really interesting, the evolution of that governance model. It's really, really cool how that evolved. It's fascinating, and I dove so deep into it, and I'm still learning about those mechanics. It's very, very in depth, right? And that how I see it play out, and you can see that also in Curve. Like there's certain power blocks, Convex, Yearn, StakeDAO, etc., and they all have their different kind of way of voting on things, right? So if there's certain proposals, Convex is probably going to vote yes, or Yearn is going to vote yes. So like, I think these are kind of sub-DAOs actually. And my opinion is that direct democracy is an illusion anyway. So it's better to work with sub-DAOs. So then in the beginning, we probably only have one liquid locker, and maybe not even on the release on day one, because I was thinking about that. I wanted to release the liquid locker on day one, but I also don't want to cause any stress or emotion, right? Because the liquid locker concept is even hard for us to fully understand. There's a lot of complexities there.
There's a big trade-off, right? There's trade-offs with everything, So there's a lot of things the user has to think about.
Yeah. So in the beginning, it's just going to be the VEYND or just a liquid token, right? And then later we will introduce a liquid locker with the feature that it's dynamically that you can lock. Like if let's say you have a VE NFT, so you don't the problem in curves, like that I experienced myself, I locked all my curve for like 4 years. I was super bullish on it, right? And now, there's liquid lockers now that actually do a lot of the work that I'm doing manually. And there's gas calls involved that I can actually outsource to them. Like, shit. But in our case, if you have your VE YND NFT, you can merge that NFT in the liquid locker. And the liquid locker itself, it's also will be able to rebalance itself. If you want to withdraw from the liquid locker, you can actually get the underlying NFT. I call it NFT because it's a VE model. You can back and arbitrage the liquid locker, right? So
interesting design choices. I'm excited to see them in the jungle, so to speak, coming up here. So well, probably a good place to wrap, Deo. Really appreciate your time. It's been a fantastic conversation, learning more about what you guys are building at YieldNest, talking about LRTs, obviously, and kind of the state of the market in general. We'll have to have you on again here in a couple months after things have developed for you.
Fantastic. Yeah, and one thing that there's a lot to uncover, and I'm not going to dive into it, but there's obviously also a whole AI agent element to this optimization, because I see the combination of AI agents and decentralized finance as a very match made in heaven, actually. So, but yeah, that's for another day. Or for articles, please go to YieldNest, go to Lamarisk, or go to Nest AI, and go in the trenches and go deep in the rabbit hole.
Absolutely.
Follow the white rabbit. If you go to Nest AI and you'll see you go to Nest AI. It's the first sub down from YieldNest. It's we put it a bit mysterious on purpose. You have to choose, and it's like follow the white rabbit, right?
Got to do it. And I guess on that note too, on the research level too, for anybody listening, LEA Research will be publishing some research related to YieldNest as well. So we will be with you guys in those trenches. So definitely be on the lookout for that. And thanks everybody for listening. We'll have to do it again sometime and talk about the AI angle for sure. But have a good one, everybody. Take care. Thanks again, Deo.
Great.
Talk later.
Thank you. See you guys. Appreciate it.